There are a lot of emotions that come into selling a house. And there's a lot of fear sometimes about what's it going to look like? Who's going to move all of the stuff? For some of us, there is a known fear of the tax man. What's going to happen, right? Where are the surprises going to come from? You know, there is one thing that my team can't afford to hear me say, and a thing that you really don't want to hear either. Boy, I didn't see that coming, right? That is one of the greatest fears that people have, bad surprises. And when you're selling a house, there's enough emotion on the line. What we're going to do on Consider This program is try to remove some of that complexity so you know when to be concerned with the IRS and when not to understand some of the benefits and pitfalls when you decide to relocate or move. Home really is where the heart is. You can move, but let's do it right. Well, good morning and welcome to Consider This program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
I'm Chris Rodgers.
Happy to have you along, Chris. Hey, if you go to the screen real quick, you can look. We've kind of shrunk Chris in the picture just so everybody would look all right. But here is Chris. He's part of the team. There's 29 of us that are on the team. Chris is an associate advisor, a big part of ours. Where the associate advisor really fits into the financial enhancement group is we actually have a planning team. Each of us have niches that are senior advisors that are out there. Dean does the Social Security. Grant is really in charge of a lot of the things that have to do with 401k world in terms of things that are going on with especially teachers in that environment. Mine is really legacy planning. We all focus on the estate planning side, if you will, but we all have those places that we go. We have the associate advisors that come in, Chris and Darren and Michael and you know, a few others that are out there. We bring in and they help us create checklists and be able to do the research so that we can inform you the best and make sure that we're all following that same suit. So much to Chris's dismay, I think he would fess up to this, I asked tougher questions than your teachers did, your professors did at AU, yes?
Absolutely, yes.
And there's nothing like having the Brady Bunch on a Zoom screen where you're put on the spot. You know, you've got the managing partner. I'm lucky enough to have that role, right? And I will ask people a question, and then I arbitrarily pick somebody to answer it, and they do a great job. But that's why those planning teams are critical. You know, we are not a franchise institution where we have one company name and everybody does their own thing. We are a collective that collaborates on all things, and that really, really matters. So let's talk about the selling of appreciated assets. So if I'm going to go sell my home, what are the questions that you need to ask me first, Chris?
The first one's going to be, number one is, you know, how long have you lived there?
Why does that matter?
Because the tax implication that comes with it. You know, a lot of people don't understand that there is actually a time limit out there that if you haven't lived in your house for a certain period of time, there could be a capital gain tax that you possibly owe.
Okay, so what is the time? How does that look, work, feel?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Joe, as long as you have lived in your house for at least 2 years, and you don't have over if you're married, if you don't have over a half a $1 million
Long-term capital gain, appreciation.
Appreciation.
Not a lot of those in Indiana.
Nope, not a lot, especially in Anderson. And so as long as you don't have over that $500,000 gain and you lived over there for 2 years, there's zero capital gain tax for you.
Now, you aren't old enough to know this, but how many times can you use that exemption?
That is a good question.
There is no limit.
Okay.
As long as you've lived there 2 of the last 5 years, you have the ability to do that. When I started in the industry, you can only use that once. And if you married somebody, Chris is a recent weddie, if you actually married somebody who had already used that exemption, you didn't get to use it again, right? And so the reason I bring this up is, you know, Benjamin Franklin said most men die at 25. They just wait for their bodies to catch up. A lot of us get tax code in our heads without recognizing that tax code changes all of the time, right? And so part of what you're going to experience in your career over the next 40 years, I'm 33 in. That's not telling you when I'm retiring, but over the next 40-year span, what you're going to find are the things that you have to unlearn, right? And the same is true for you out there listening to this show. If you're doing this on your own, there's things that you have to unlearn, if you will. So talk to me about rentals or second homes. How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So really, it kind of depends, and I feel like we say that a lot in our financial planning is that it does depend, because some people, they may sell a rental home and they may look to reinvest those funds elsewhere. So, some people will just say, I'm done with this. I don't want any more part of it. And so, there could be a change in the tax code and in the difference. And so if you just say, Chris, I'm done with these rental properties. I'm ready to cash out and look elsewhere for investments. Then you would be looking at a long-term capital gains tax.
And
And
recapture of this
recapture,
nasty little thing called depreciation. There is nothing better than to be able to depreciate while you own it, and nothing worse than recapturing when you sell it.
Yes, absolutely. And so you're typically going to, at least in today's code, you're typically going to be looking at a 15% long-term capital gains tax unless your income is above, is it 160?
Let's not get into the numbers because things change all the time. But that's, as long as you're in the 12% bracket or under, there is no long-term capital gains tax, which is why it's important to understand how things are classified. And it's why we work with very, very smart CPAs. I was talking to Michelle Skeen earlier of E-Step Doctor and Company. We work with Huth Thompson in Lafayette, Ben Smith that's here, and that's here in Anderson and Muncie. He's the president of E-Step Doctor and Company. Mike Layer down in Indianapolis. Brett Spangler's part of the FEG team. It's important to have those kind of people because there's different situations that are there. But you do not want to sell a property, a rental property, without having a plan and a strategy in place. Otherwise, I didn't see that coming can be the phrase that you might be using tomorrow. So talk to me about the housing markets. Where are we at, Chris?
Yeah, this year, or really this past year, has been just absolutely crazy. We've seen interest rates really plummet, and I know I've heard you talk about that a lot on this program, and so mortgage interest rates have really come down. So really, it is something that we would suggest that, depending on your interest rate on your home, that it may be something worth considering refinancing. I know in the past, I've heard you say, 2.5% on a 30-year mortgage is just unbelievable. I mean, just thinking back to 2008 when, the average interest rate was 6%.
Right.
And we've basically cut that in half.
1980, the average was 18, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Right. In 1980, the average was 18% interest for a 30-year mortgage. So phenomenal period of time. But tell me if I'm buying a house, why an interest rate matters.
Well, at least for me personally, it was the biggest thing for me, and it was my biggest worry because I was worried that rates could possibly go back up. And, really it's because that's the amount of money that you are essentially paying the bank to continue to let you live in that house before the house is paid off. And so it's one of the largest expenses that come with home ownership.
What do the interest rates do to prices for a house?
So typically, at least in this market,
all markets. Don't confuse yourself.
Sure. So in the current market environment that we're seeing is that with lower interest rates, we're seeing prices just go through the roof.
Is that what the math people would say is correlation or causation?
Depends on probably who you're talking to, but I would say that they're correlated. I mean,
okay.
as interest rates.
So why does an interest rate falling make the value of a house go higher?
Because people can afford more of a house.
Why?
Because with a lower interest rate, that means they're going to end up and get a lower payment.
Aha! Here's what I'm trying to get at, folks. So when you ask why interest rates or why prices of houses are going up where they are, one of our ladies is living in a flipper. One of the girls on our team, her and her family are living in a flipper, and they're doing work on it every single weekend. And she informed me today that a 2x4, like I would have any idea what a 2x4 costs, but that they're $18 for a 2x4. And she had these big eyes and said, I need to know when the commodity price is going to fall, right, in terms of what's going on. Yes. Houses, especially first homes and usually second homes, are almost always bought based on payment, not price.
Yes.
Payment, not price. So as interest rates fall, you have the price go up of the house because the payments adjust. Now, it is still based on it's still based on your debt to income ratio in terms of what payment the bank will happily lend you money for. But that's why you see that appreciation, if you will. I always worry when anybody says, this market has gone nuts. How do we know, right?
Sure.
In the tech wreck, Alan Greenspan said in the mid-'90s, irrational exuberance. Apparently he was right after March 10th of 2000, but he was wrong for the next 3 years as the market soared and skyrocketed. And, we do not get into the game of saying we are here or we're not here. What I will tell you is what tends to drive when interest rates go down, prices do tend to go up. As interest rates are starting to go back up, you may see prices begin to steady out. So how do we help people that are going through this process of selling an appreciated home?
Well, really, we sit down with our families, and if they bring that to our attention that they are looking to sell their house, and most people are saying, Chris, what's the tax implication? And a majority of the time, like Joe, you said, there is none for people who have lived there for longer than 2 years, just because house prices haven't increased that dramatically since they purchased their house, and most people are delighted. They thought that they would be looking at a tax nightmare. But on the other side of things, we take care of a lot of families who have rental properties, and so if they sell that and they don't understand, if you're in that situation and you're going to sell that rental property and you don't understand the tax consequences and you're not sitting down with a fiduciary, someone who's looking out for you, then you could be hit with that tax nightmare.
It can get to be very, very ugly, very, very quickly. But the biggest part, folks, is worry. We help reduce financial regrets. That is our driving force in life. And sometimes one of those financial regrets is worry. One of my favorite stories is my microwave. We didn't have a microwave until the early 70s. Other people had them a lot sooner. We just didn't have the financial resources to be able to do that. When my grandmother passed away, I inherited her microwave that carried this 300-pound behemoth. It didn't weigh that much, but it was big and heavy, right? I carry it into our house on Oakdale Drive here in Anderson, and it goes out, and I don't go to stores. I've been shopping, and I finally get it to Brocula Appliance, and I carry it in, and I've been worried about the bill, and the guy finally says, listen, we can fix it, but it's cheaper to go to Sears and buy a new one. And I go, what? We've gone for 6 months without a microwave. I felt like such an idiot. But that's what happens. Sometimes we have fears we don't need to have, problems we don't need to have, because we don't have all of this done. Folks, you don't have to do this on your own. If you want to, it's your business. But if you're looking for a fiduciary, that's our business. Call us, 800-928-4001, or go to yourlifeafterwork.com. Get signed up for a Next Steps meeting. Chris and the planning team look forward to meeting you. 800-928-4001.